Hello again from Kampala, Uganda. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful day. There's a gentle breeze here on this compound that I live on. Private transport here has been banned for 2 weeks. So that means that this is pretty much where I am for the time being. We are allowed to go out and walk around to the local shops or anything like that. But you know, as long as we keep our distance from other people, but pretty much this is where I am. And, you know, let's face it, it's not the worst place in the world to be stuck for the next 2 weeks. It's a pretty beautiful place that I live. But, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes I feel like there's this idea that as Christians, we need to be holding everything together all the time. You know, we're supposed to be feeling nothing but peace and joy, right? You know, we're doing something wrong if we're feeling anything else. Maybe our faith isn't quite as strong as that person down the road who seems to not be bothered at all by what's going on right now. Maybe it's just the British part of me, you know, that stiff upper lip attitude, that feeling that you just grin and get on with it and bear it and get through it. Well, today I really want to reassure you that you are not failing if you're feeling. In John chapter 11, the Bible tells us about a time when a really good friend of Jesus, somebody that he loved dearly, was very sick and eventually died. The man's name was Lazarus. I expect you may know the story, the miraculous power of God that raised Lazarus from the dead after he had been in his tomb for 4 days in the heat. But what caught my eye as I read through this story this time came before that astounding miracle. And it's found in John 11 and verse 35, which says this: Jesus wept. This friend that Jesus loved dearly was dead, and Jesus wept for him. He felt a strong emotion in the situation in which he found himself, and he expressed it with tears running down his face. So much so that the Jews who were present looked on and said, "See how much he loved that man." Jesus felt, and he shed tears for that feeling. But he didn't stay in that place. We don't follow that little tiny verse up with 10 chapters talking about Jesus continuing to weep. In fact, that response of his is the shortest verse in the Bible in the majority of translations that we have. Jesus, he recognized what he was feeling. He allowed himself to mourn. But then look at what he does. Reading from verse 38 in John chapter 11. It says, Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days." Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." An amazing story. But there are 3 things that I noticed that Jesus did here. See, firstly, he recognized his position with the Father. You notice that's how he starts his prayer. "Father, I thank you that you have heard me." He knew that God, his Father, would hear his cry. Secondly, he was a witness to what he knew. He told the people around him about the God who he is. And finally, he acted in faith. Secure in that knowledge of who he was. And he saw a great miracle happen. Now, I don't know what you're feeling today. You might be feeling fine and happy. You might be feeling stressed or fearful or frustrated or anger. You might be feeling grief or all of those feelings together and so many more. It is okay to feel those emotions. You are not failing if you are feeling today. But what are you going to do now? Are you going to stay in that place? Or are you going to follow the example of Jesus? And you start by recognizing your position with the Father. The Bible tells us that we are children of God. And that means that he hears you. You are a child of God and you have the ear of the Father. He is there when you cry out in despair. He loves you. Secondly, you can be a positive witness in this time. Jesus, he showed his emotion, but he showed that his faith in God was stronger than what he was feeling. What an amazing testimony that must have been to the people who were there. Don't try to hide away what you're feeling under some false idea that you can't show any emotion. But be prepared to show that your faith is greater. Yes, I'm scared, but I know that God is greater than this situation. Yes, I'm stressed, but I know I can find rest in the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And finally, be ready to act in faith. Right now, that might mean sitting at home when you desperately want to be outside, because that's your way to protect other people. It might mean working out some kind of system to help the people who live in your neighborhood or on your street. It might mean sacrificial giving of the food in your house to help somebody who doesn't have anything. It might be putting aside time each and every day to pray for the people that you know, or for a country in the world that is struggling right now. Let your faith prompt an action. You are free to feel today, but don't let that stop you from recognizing the awesomeness of our great God. Until next time, have a wonderful day.